Welcome to Frugal Fundamentals, our second week of our 6-week virtual workshop. The theme today is career development. Earlier, if you guys were on our IG, we had Coach Dr. Darren Roberts, and today we have Dr. Donovan Smalls. Donovan is someone that I've admired from afar for quite some time. I recently came back across what he was doing because he has a new book that's set to come out pretty soon. So I figured this would be a great opportunity to connect with him on a more intimate scale and have him answer questions for anyone and everyone that's involved. This Frugal Fundamentals 6-week workshop is sponsored and in connection. Sorry, he can't hear anything. Let's see. Let's make sure he's off mute. More. Make co-host. Okay, how about now? Can you hear? Okay. Anyone, and the chat is open, so for any questions that some people they may have, just let me know. Donovan says he can't hear us. Anyone else having trouble hearing?
No, I think Donovan might not be on audio.
Okay. Yep. I can hear you now.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. Perfect. Yeah. So, yeah, we're still getting used to us. I promise next week that we're gonna have it all set up. We're gonna have it all set up. But thank you guys for your patience. It's just got a couple more people waiting. I got to text them. We'll start now. Okay. Let's see. Meeting ID. Okay. And then we'll get started. But yes, I hope everyone's doing well. And then we'll go from here. So make sure it's recording. Okay. There we go. So Donovan, I gave the introduction, but now we'd love to have you give us some backstory. Tell us a little bit about yourself and, let the audience know what you're about.
Okay, well, hello, everyone. Thanks for having me on. My name is Donovan. I'm from Union, New Jersey. Right now, I am a professor of sport management at Virginia State University. This is my first year, so things have been a little bit hectic with everything that's going on, but really enjoying it. A lot of, what I try to focus on is student athlete development as far as research and really understanding the perspective of student athletes and trying to get them to win beyond sports, try to help them look at their lives in a way that is going to create a sustainable life after sports. So that's really, some of the things that I'm very, very interested in.
Oh, it's amazing. So how did you get into sports management? Like, were you always interested in sports, or how did it come about?
Yeah, I've always been interested in sports. I played sports all my life. I played soccer, basketball, and baseball. And then as I started to get older, I played basketball in college at the College of New Jersey and also at Erskine College in South Carolina. And so I majored in health and physical education, and then I went on to get my master's in sport management from Virginia State, and then went on to get my doctorate from Drexel University in athletic administration. So I've always been in sports, love sports, and just want to really give back. I think that's my big thing.
No, I really enjoy you saying, giving back. Because especially with this new evolution of sports business being so profitable, you see a lot of take. So for you to say you want to give back, it's important. So how do you define career development? What's career development in your eyes?
Career development for me is about looking at things in its totality, trying to teach people not just about the career, but also about family. Who are you trying to become as a human being? I think that's the core of it. And then once you get students or student athletes to really look at who they are as humans, then you can start to say, okay, where do you want your life to go? Because I think a lot of student athletes look at it in terms of just the career, but what type of lifestyle do you want to live? Because those two things have to match in my belief. So, you know, career development is personal development. It's all of those things in one.
Yeah, so like from a tactical standpoint, you know, as student
Yeah.
athletes, you know, you grow up all your
Mhm.
life trying to make it to that level, you know,
Yeah,
to be like the provider for your
absolutely.
family. So how do you like kind of get them to change that
Mhm.
mindset of, you know, this is what got me here, but it's
Yeah.
not what's going to keep me here or, you know, help me prosper long term.
Yeah, I think for me, I try to come from the perspective of what's next, as opposed to throwing the statistic of less than 2% of athletes are going to make it pro, right? Because when you are chasing a dream, I don't think anyone wants to hear, well, you could have an injury, you might not make it. Like, you know, those are things that could easily turn somebody off from listening to you. So I try to come from the perspective of, okay, let's say you do become a professional athlete. What happens after that? Because eventually you have to retire. And I use the example of, I think Kobe Bryant retired at 36, which is relatively young to, you know, the amount of years that hopefully you'll live on this earth. So 36 is young. You
Yeah.
still need to figure out how you're going to build upon that in the future. You know, or how are you going to create different businesses so that you can create different streams of income? All of those things, I think, are important.
Yeah, I really like that strategy, like saying like you're not going to be part of the 2%. Like, no, let them think that, but also
Hmm.
have their mindset think like beyond that, because it's a lot harder to teach a kid
Hmm.
when you're telling them like who are you to say like you're going to make it, because there's only 2% of people that make it. So
Exactly.
in terms of like principles that you
Hmm.
teach them, what are like some of the main focus points that you focus on?
I think number one is understanding who you are. I think a lot of student athletes view themselves as just athletes, particularly males. And from my demographic of being at an HBCU, you have a lot of African American males who focus on sport. You know, that's just a lot of times that's the culture that you grow up in.
Hmm.
And so, you know, you have to understand who you are. You are more than an athlete, right? And it starts with that. And then we can get into what's the end goal of what you want to do later on in life. You know, identity for me always comes first, and then it's the plan second.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So tell me about the process of your book. Like, how did it come about? Why? What
Hmm.
made you want to write the book and develop the curriculum for
Yeah.
the student athletes that you help?
Yeah. So it really started off, and I'll make a long story short, but it started off in middle school for me. Basketball was like the main focus, and I was a highly ranked player in New Jersey. And then I got moving on to high school, I got invited to the junior Nike camp in St. Louis. So I was playing against guys like Steph Curry and Derrick Rose, that we were all at the same camp. So the first college letter that I ever received was from Florida State. So that mindset of like going D1 was the main thing for me.
Hmm.
And then I got to my senior year of high school and I didn't win a scholarship. So that was probably the most devastating point of my life. So then I tried to walk on at Coastal Carolina. That didn't work out. I transferred from there. I went to Erskine College, Division II school in South Carolina. I played for a year, but then from there, I really just wanted to be back on the court. I wasn't getting much playing time. My eligibility was running out. And so I transferred to the College of New Jersey, where Division III school, where I played, and then I got my degree. And so as my athletic career started to descend, I realized that there were a lot of other student athletes who were going through the same thing. And that led me to trying to help support young student athletes along their journey to see that they are more than an athlete.
No, that's really great. I like how you're using your personal experiences to, you know, create a story.
Yeah.
My little brother, he went to junior college, and then from there he went to D1, and then from there he ended up at an NAIA. So I
Yeah.
think it's like what my dad always says, you know, there's many ways to the top of the mountain. So understanding that as an athlete, You want to go where you're wanted. You want to go where you're taking advantage of the resources that are given to you, and not just because this is a good school and I can play college basketball or college soccer or anything like that. So I appreciate you sharing that story. And
Thanks.
you talked about, failure. Athletes go through failure, but it doesn't happen until they're at a stage where they don't really know how to handle it. So what are your what are your remedies to that you taught some of your student athletes?
Well, I use my personal story about, and I write about this in my book. I think not going D1 was probably the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because it allowed me to focus more on what's next. A lot of my peers who I grew up with, they went on to play Division I basketball, but once they graduated, they then had to go back and get additional education because they couldn't get a career within the major that they chose. So, for me, it immediately helped me focus on what's next, and so that's what I try to teach student athletes. It's like, yes, you may not make it to the, if you don't make it to where you want to be, you have to look at it as a blessing in disguise in some cases, because it'll allow you to focus on different things.
Yeah, that's a great topic that you discussed, because I was actually got in an argument with somebody about this. He was asking me like which set of athletes transitioned the best, and I was like, minor league players, because they have the mindset that they might not work out because they know like something next is going to happen. He said no, NFL players, because they have the capital. Even though the average is 3 to 4 years, they know, 3 to 4 years. And if they make it past that, they're in a good situation. If they don't, they still have enough time to get the entry level job to, to kind of land on have more of a leeway in terms of like, they have like a year, 2 years to kind of get on their feet. And I was like, I don't know, but he had a good point.
Yeah.
He made some good points.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've noticed is, let's say, somebody makes it and they go and they play 4 years of overseas basketball. And then they retire and then they want to go into business. Well, the athletic career didn't really build any business skills. So now you have to go back and try to get more experience, because the job is not going to hire you unless you obviously create a business on your own. But if you are going to be an employee, then you didn't really develop any skills that are going to, make you attractive to other companies compared to the person that has been working on their career outside of sports.
Yeah. So can you talk about that? Like, how do the soft skills from sports, how does it translate to the workforce in your experience? And what hard skills can athletes kind of take advantage of, or like take the time to learn while they're, playing?
I think the leadership role definitely helps. Being a part of a team. One thing in my classrooms, I try to make sure that student athletes are heavily involved in leadership roles with group projects and things of that nature, because, you don't want them to just sit in the back of the classroom and take on that persona of being the dumb jock. It's, let's get involved. Let's use what you know on the court or on the field and apply it in the classroom as well. So leadership, I think teamwork, those are the main two. And then, I think problem solving is probably the most important, because, if you're an athlete, you have to develop a scheme against different opponents, and those things definitely transfer over to the real world. So being able to adjust, all of those skills, I think, transfer.
No, I think that's great, because like most of these jobs now, they have like these training programs. The most important part is getting in, and then they'll train you what they need. But the ability to solve problems, the ability to goal set as an athlete, companies love that. Business people love that, because they don't want to babysit you all the time. They want to give you the problem, and at the end of the day, figure out how to solve it. And that's what athletes are good at.
Absolutely.
Obviously, you need to take some direction as well, but for the most part,
Yeah.
and because you're at a university, I have to ask you this. I'm not sure how much you could talk about it, but
Hmm.
with the image and likeness and all that coming into play,
Yeah.
how is it helping or hurting your university, and where do you see
Hmm.
it playing a part in career development and NCAA regulations?
Yeah. Well, I've been able to briefly talk about it with students and student athletes, teaching them about different ways that they can possibly make money while they're in school, through creating, podcasts or whatever their skill set is. Um, we haven't really had, I guess, any student athletes that I know of that have, been heavily involved in creating their own platform. But it's definitely something that I can do a better job of, talking with our student athletes about, because it is an avenue. I think creating your own is very important.
No, it's really important. I really agree with your sentiment. I want to ask, and there's questions in the chat box that we'll take advantage of as well. But I want to ask, do you see like this new wave
Hmm.
affecting like team sports? Because now I'm an athlete, I'm in college, whether it's going to be a year or 2 years, three, four,
Yeah.
I'm now focused on, all right, how can I make money while I'm here instead of
Hmm.
like focusing on my game, keeping up with my grades.
Mm.
Like, how do you see that all kind of playing in together?
I think I'm always for the student athlete, so I love
Mm.
it.
Yeah,
I
that's true.
love that they can go out and start to take matters into their own hands. I don't know how much, I think there's a lot of learning to do still
Hmm.
about ways that they can still keep their eligibility and make money and create their own platforms. But I think with the population of students that I deal with, it would be very beneficial, because a lot of our HBCU student athletes, they have, family priorities, things that they need to take care at home. So if they can create their own platform while being on scholarship, I think that would be great. That would be something that'll help themselves. It could help their brand in terms of, if you don't make it to the league, you're still creating a platform, you're creating awareness so people can see you and partner with you, if that's what you choose to do.
No, I think it's great too. And
Yeah.
I feel like it's a win-win if everyone can, kind of get on the same page
Hmm.
and move forward together. There's going to be a lot of compliance that plays a role, but
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting. I want to follow up with the question that was asked.
Okay.
When it comes to you teaching student athletes, is there like a specific or particular learning exercise that you use, a
Hmm.
technique? I know you have your second assist development program, but
Yeah.
how do you get them to achieve what they want to achieve?
Well, I think so. I guess there's two aspects to it. One is I've been focusing more on research, academic research with student athletes and learning their perspectives, and then giving back recommendations in terms of, okay, this is what you told me that you are doing. Um, I'm recommending that you go and reach out and be a mentee to this particular individual. So I think partnering with different mentors, um, at our university, we have great relationships with different businesses and you know minor league teams, and so I think that's a great way to allow them to get exposure. And then just sitting down with them, we also do academic advising too. So just sitting down with student athletes and to see what their plan is. Are they choosing the right major? Because we know a lot of student athletes will choose a major that's going to give them the most time to participate in their sport. It happens. Or they'll choose to be a sport management major because they love sports, but sport management is such a broad field that they don't know what we need to pinpoint what you want to do.
Hmm.
So I think that career development piece that you talked about earlier is important, because we have to start setting them up, from freshman year all the way through to senior year.
So a follow-up question,
Mhm.
and sorry for the innuendo. A follow-up question to this is, how do you get the athletes and the student athletes to follow up? Because that's the hardest part. You can give them all the resources,
right.
but for them to go and be active and proactive about it, like how do you guys, how do you implement that?
I think that's the challenge. Trying to keep track with them, giving them a personal plan. I try to make everything as individualized as possible. So, sending them emails, right? That's obviously an effective way. But again, like you said, having them checking up with the person that they are supposed to be reaching out to, I think that's been effective. But again, I think personal responsibility is what I try to teach, but I do agree I could probably do a better job of figuring out how to follow up with them, to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I just think it's really interesting when it comes to that.
Yeah, because mentorship, I mean, mentorship does help. I'm actually doing a research study now, and one of my participants talked about how creating a mentorship program a year after student athletes graduate, figuring out a way to still stay in contact, mentor to mentee for at least that first year once they're in their job field. I think that would be another great strategy.
No, I think that's really important. And I think that's what it's all about, having that mentor as a positive example. And with the Frugal Athlete, I don't want a shameless plug. That's what we're trying to do, create content around examples of athletes that have, leveraged their careers, leveraged the capital that they've made, and have done, things that help them build, strong financial playbooks and, strong transitions out of the sport. So I think it's really important.
Yeah.
I want to ask you one thing. And just for everyone involved, what the questions are open? Great question, Keel. Questions are open for anybody. Dr. Donovan has been gracious enough with his time. So it's been really amazing to have him involved. So I really appreciate you taking the time once again. It really means a lot. And your book is going to be live May 11th?
Yes, May 11th on Amazon. Yes.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to have to get that out and get that in support. So what can I ask? I feel like I asked you everything, but I got to take advantage of this opportunity.
Yeah.
So with student athletes, now that they're, making, or they have the potential to make money, whatever, level D1, D2, JC, what financial programs are you guys implementing? Like, do the schools work with the programs, or is it someone just comes in, gives a talk? How does it work?
Well, with financial programs, honestly, we don't do a lot of, financial literacy or anything in that nature. We focus a lot on personal development, professionalism, career development. Obviously, financial literacy is involved in that, but I think we could definitely do a better job of the financial part, how to manage your money. One of the things I always give the example to student athletes is a lot of them want to go into coaching, but they don't understand that. Let's say you want to become a high school coach. I usually advise, and there are many ways to become a high school coach, but from my experience, it's been, if you want to become a coach, I think becoming a teacher in the public school system will obviously help you, because if you decide that you want to become a coach but you're not a teacher, they might hire you and give you a $2,000, $5,000 stipend to coach, right? But you can't live off a $5,000 stipend. But if you become a teacher, then let's say they'll pay you $50,000 to be a health and physical education teacher, and then on top of that, you'll coach and get a $5,000 stipend. So now you're creating a sustainable life financially, right? As opposed to just thinking, okay, I just want to go into coaching, but you need to know how to become a coach.
That's important. I really think that's great that you shared that, because I remember I never want to be a coach. Like, respect to all coaches out there. They have amazing patience. Yes. I don't know how they deal with it, but I just never wanted to be a coach. And but a mentor of mine said, a lot of struggles that athletes face is like they want to get into coaching right after they're playing. A lot of them left early. The minimum is you need your bachelor's degree to be a coach at, the collegiate level. So understanding the different like processes around it, I think is really important. And we have a question from our partner, Jonathan Van Horn, who's also, a character coach and has been gracious enough to share the SHIFT program with anyone that wants to know more. He's going to be at the end to give us his talk. He said, how do you help athletes not buy into the lie that who they are is just based on their athletic performance and what they do?
So what I usually do is, and this is for all students, but it targets student athletes, is what skills do you possess besides being an athlete? And so I try to focus more on that than their athletic ability, because it goes back to the what's next principle. And what I've noticed is a lot of us in general, we tend to ignore the skills that come easy to us. So even for me, I didn't know that teaching was a thing. I never wanted to become an educator. It took my student teacher advisor, supervisor during my student teaching experience. She told me that I was, that there was something there. But I just thought it was just a skill that, I just didn't pay attention to it. But I think if you look at most people who are great at something, it probably comes easy to them and it could easily be overlooked. You know what I mean? We look at a talk show host. They might be a great listener, but those listening skills, you may overlook them. But, Oprah's great at it because she's a good listener. She knows how to probe. She knows that, but that could easily be overlooked. So I think just trying to get them to understand, like, these skills that you have, you might be able to draw. That's a unique skill that not everybody has. And you can use that to do some great things.
That's important. The skills that you have are right under your nose, and just trying to figure out how to apply them is really important. And to follow up, how do you help athletes discover and clarify who they are? It was a double question. I just forgot to ask the first part of it.
Yeah. So I teach them about journaling. I think journaling is extremely important. Taking time to yourself. The era that student athletes are growing up in is very information driven. You take in so much information throughout the day that you may forget to actually spend time with yourself. And I talk about this in my book. My dad always says you have to get to know who you are, right? You have to study yourself, right? Because think about it. If you wake up, you go straight on Instagram, and then you get on the rest of your day, and then you end your day with Instagram, you never took time to really think about, okay, what do I like about myself? What's my why? Why do I want to do this? Why do I even play sports? Because
That's a great question.
For me, when my athletic career started ending, I started to question why I wanted to become a Division I athlete anyway. And I think it was because of what we see on TV, the media, right? But at the end of the day, you just want to play and be a part of a team and do what you love. So I think a lot of it is self-reflection and journaling.
No, that's really important. I think one question that we always like discuss in the locker room is like, if you can make as much as you're making now playing sports, doing something else, would you do it? And it's always interesting to see who answers. So I think understanding your why, asking why 5 times is really important. And a question from Luis Roman: Are your student athletes within the sports management program required to do any internships? What are some positive stories of your students testing the waters of a different profession and falling in love with it? Great question.
Our students are required to do internships. We have partnerships with a lot of different businesses in the area. Success stories. We have a lot of success stories. We have some individuals so I think recently, and we like to bring back a lot of guest speakers as well to our classrooms. That exposure really helps. There is Larry Ridley. I think he works for New York Sports or SNY, something like that. And he came back and talked about esports, and a lot of our students are very interested in that. We have a student who is working, I think, with the Washington Wizards. So we do have a lot of success stories. We have Don Brooks, who has his own training facility. He's trained Kim Kardashian, and he's done a lot. So, and with a lot of celebrities. So we do have a lot of success stories within the program. Yeah, but I think, like you said earlier, I think now it's allowing me to see, like, we do need some more financial literacy there.
No, I think what's so great about sports is that even if you don't go pro, there's so many different ways to get involved in the sport.
Yeah.
You know, my big bro, he's in the Zoom right now, Reggie.
Yeah.
He played at a high level, and he used his relationships. You know, he's working as an agent, advisor, connector for these athletes, and, you know, doing the due diligence for these athletes that, you know, may not have had the, you know, upbringing that he had, or the relationships or the experience. And he saved his clients and players, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know, just by simply getting his clients to ask the agents the right questions, because these agents will tell you anything. So understanding like different things like that, and understanding how to get involved in the sport, whether, you know, you play professionally or not, you know, sports law, sports business, you know, if you're into health, you know, being a chef or a player or a team, you know, physical therapy. There's just so many endless different ways to get into the sport. And even though you're not playing on the court or the field, it's a lot less stressful, and it's a lot more stability around it. So for you to, you know, with your program and how you're helping them get involved, I think is really important.
Yeah.
And another question, I know I don't want to take up too much of your time. It's a Friday. I know you got a busy weekend ahead.
Stay in the house, quarantine.
Exactly. So do you believe we're in a phase in education where all universities have transitioned to distance learning? Will there be a growth in job opportunity as adjunct professors in sports management?
That's a good question.
Yeah, Keel's killing it with the questions. Thank you, Keel. Thank you so much.
That's a really good question. I was having this conversation with my dad earlier today, because he's also a professor. The thing is, I recently saw in the news that a lot of educators are going to be laid off because of what's happening now. But because, you know, universities are having a hard time sustaining their you know, their income with students not being on campus. So as far as adjuncts, I think that probably will be a new trend, because you won't be, you know, you don't have to pay adjuncts as much as full-time professors. Yeah, I mean, my concern with going back, I've been thinking about what's going to happen in the fall. You know, the concern is that you have students coming from all over the country and internationally, living together in one dorm, going to the cafeteria, classes. You know,
it was already dirty before, so it's like they're sharing showers and like
I just don't. I think at least first semester, I personally feel like we should continue with remote learning, and then maybe second semester get back into it. But I don't know. That's going to be interesting.
I want to ask a follow-up question to that, because I was talking with the career development program that helped me, like, you know, continue my education. And my counselor was like, look into compliance jobs, because the NCAA, they really don't know what they're doing when it comes to this new laws that they're implementing. So if you can get into the compliance space and help athletes figure out that. I know you were on the call earlier with Coach Dr. Darren Roberts, and he was like, yeah, they're going to be able to make money from brands and stuff like that, but that means they're going to have to check their social media too. And, you know, kids at that age, they tweet recklessly because there's no, how can I say, there's no, you don't get in trouble for it. So like, that's a field that I've been trying to tell people to look into, because people are going to go see it. And then a follow-up question to that, from my guy, Steven. Regarding compliance, do you feel that some of the restrictions related to time constraints, access to student athletes may be relaxed a bit?
I'm sorry, I just got to read this.
No, no problem.
You know, I think as far as access to student athletes, I think they may be relaxed at the beginning until the NCAA really gets a hold on, you know, how to handle these new laws. But I think eventually, you know, the NCAA is, in my opinion, known for creating very strict rules that kind of hinder people from doing things that may seem logical. So I think they're going to eventually really tighten up on the access to student athletes.
Yeah, and to ask another question on that, like, so where do you see it going? Because like from what I've been reading, there's going to be limitations. So you're not going to be able to sign like an agent, but if you sign a marketing manager, like how does that work? You know, some of these big agencies have marketing divisions within their agency. So it's like, yeah, he doesn't have an agent, but he has a marketing agent within the same agent. So, you know, I know NCAA is going to try to kind of put the cuffs on that, but how is it? How do you think it's all going to work?
Yeah, I think that's when it gets tricky. I think it gets tricky. I saw recently that I think, what's his name? LeVar Ball. I think he's been like a pioneer in terms of helping student athletes go overseas, as opposed to going to the NCAA. So I think that's going to be another trend that we might start to see, you know, happening. Yeah.
It's really interesting.
It is, yeah.
So once again, Dr. Donovan, I want to thank you so much for your time. I'm going to have your book. Let me link your website. I think you could chat. So if you can link your website in the chat group for anyone that wants to get that. Comes out May 11th. I really appreciate everyone tuning in. Sorry again once about the technical difficulties. Two weeks in a row. But I want to give the floor to, you know, our partner in all this, Jonathan Van Horn, who's a character coach, and I want to have him tell his spiel before I let you guys go. Is he unmuted? All right, I think he. Oh no, that's all right. Can you speak?
Yeah, thanks, Amobi. I appreciate it. Dr. Smalls, thanks very much. It's a pleasure hearing from you here and just your experience and just what you're doing with student athletes. I'm also a fellow Division III athlete, so soccer player. Very familiar with college in New Jersey.
Yeah.
So, yeah, appreciate it. So it's interesting you're talking about some of the transitions, and the most important thing you talked about is identity. And that's by far one of the biggest issues that I've dealt with working with athletes is asking the question, who am I outside of my sport? Without my sport, I am nothing. And so wrestling with that. And that's really where, as I worked with pro athletes for the last 13, 14 years, answering that question. And that's where the Shift course really helps athletes in that process. So it's a 5-step framework, assisting athletes to prepare for transition, not only transition in sport, but also transition in life. And that first step in Shift is starting out. And in that process is identity and beginning to understand who you are and whose you are. Who do you give yourself to? And so that's, like I said, the first step in that process. And the second step is actually your heart discovering your why. What's your passion? What's your driving force in that? And again, Shift is a 5-step framework to helping athletes make the transitions in life, whether it's an off season or getting traded or graduating from university, as well as finishing up and retiring and going on to their next career. So check it out. Go to the shiftcourse.com is where you can check out all the information about the course itself. And I think Amobi also has some links on his website as well in the partnership. So I appreciate it, Amobi.
No doubt. And